ideas, a lot of good things happening from the folks that just presented. And, I wanted to take the tail end of this presentation, sort of to talk about, again, the idea of professional development, but talk about it as an area that is specifically focusing on positive youth sport development, sport-based development from a professional perspective. That is where we can develop people to work out in different types of community programs besides schools. And so I want to talk about professional development program as based on youth development principles. Talk about the idea, just plant some seeds about thinking about how we might develop professional development programs that are basically to prepare people to go out in different types of agencies in the community to work with youth, different types of youth with different types of strategies. The rationale for this, I have 4 areas that I think are important reasons why we might consider this. One is that working at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, I was originally in teacher education as a professor teaching people to work out in the schools. And I became interested in working with certain types of students in these schools that were marginalized in different ways. And along the way, I became involved with Don Ellison and learning about his model and adopting it quite ambitiously. As I also was working in these schools, I brought students along, and I found out that there are a lot of undergraduate students who want to go into teacher education to work in the gyms, but there are also those students who want to work in these community programs like Boys and Girls Club, YMCAs, Parks and Rec programs, and church programs. Some even want to start their own youth program. So it was kind of a special group, different type of need for these students. So my thought was to develop a professional development track that would prepare people for these particular types of settings, other than the non-school setting. So I know we've talked about dealing with teachers here. I want to just kind of propose this idea as part of this presentation to look at how we can serve those diverse needs of pre-service teachers that come in wanting to teach kids, but basically not necessarily in a regular school setting. And physical activity, as we all know, is plays a valuable role in our delivery of programs, and especially with the TPSR model, values-based teaching. And Barton Hirsch, who wrote a book called A Place to Call Home, cited a year-long study that he looked at over 300 youth participants in after-school programming and asked them what made them come back. And one of the things that stuck out, number one, was the idea of being involved with physical activity in sports. It was a magnet for these kids, and we all kind of knew that, but research has kind of supported that, obviously, and it has become an ally for what we do with youth. And then also, there's a need for qualified professionals to work out in these community-based programs. Community-based programs that nestled in these Boys and Girls Clubs that I've worked in, professionalizing these particular leaders in there is really important. We put people out there that have some good professional skills, some good idea about development, youth development, and to just give them solid footing to be able to provide those types of programs that meet the needs of students. And then the last part of this is scarcity of programs. What I mean by that is I'm talking about just professional development programs. I know we have programs that have teacher education programs. Dave talked about his and working with teacher ed. Mike, Sarah, I know, does this with her undergraduate teacher ed programs. But programs that really focus on that idea of youth development, the idea that we are dealing with a specific type of set of contexts that are community-based, not necessarily not school-based programs. And so developing these types of programs that will professionalize the roles of people leading in these particular community programs. So those are 4 rationales which I want to just kind of throw out there as why we're looking at this. where this is nested in terms of university, and I'm going to speak from our perspective at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, is that there is a broad area of what we call kinesiology pedagogy. It's a focus on teaching and using sport in different ways. And typically what we have here is one track being a teacher education licensure track, which are really bounded by certain types of qualifications, certain kinds of standards that are set. The other one that I propose is a community youth sport development track, which is basically a track that really addresses those needs that I talked about students who want to work in these community-based programs. And so under the guise of what we call kinesiology pedagogy, we have this particular focus for these particular students under a concentration which we call community youth sport development. And that particular program is somewhat parallel to teacher education. It certainly emphasizes types of methods that students or teachers need, leaders need, the content knowledge that they need and all of that. But it does situate it within a different set of contexts other than the school gym. And course of study, just to kind of give you an idea of what this might look like. As most of us know, we all have at a university a general university course. So those courses are always going to be there as part of a program of study for these particular types of students. So the general university core will be certainly part of that course of study for these youth development students. Kinesiology core also is a part of it. And when we talk about the kinesiology core, we're talking about those subdisciplines within the field of kinesiology, which these students obviously need. And I'm sure we're familiar with that within our own teacher education program or within our own professional programs at our universities. But the kinesiology core is very critical. Our students take that kinesiology core. And then there's that third core, which is the one that focuses on the youth development. And that is kind of the point of departure from what we call the teacher ed program. And in that we have what we call core courses, electives, and internships. And those particular core courses really nest themselves on focusing on different types of strategies, experiences, different types of knowledge bases that are focusing on the area of youth development and the different types of community settings in which youth development programs operate. Just to kind of give you an idea of this, these core experiences from what we've done is one area is what we call pedagogy, and that is teaching TPSR. And certainly we've seen some great examples of this from the folks up here, and we tend to focus on TPSR within different types of experiences. One is actually a teacher pedagogy class where they learn different skills. And some of those skills are founded by the TPSR model. Those are not some of them, but all of those are founded by the TPS model. And with that, we use the TARE to give feedback to the students. We did that this semester. We do filming. We give them some pedagogy, the students' pedagogical skills to help in terms of orchestrating a lesson. And this takes place within a separate class as a regular methods class with practicas that are attached to it. And those practicas bring students in to work with our undergraduate students, secondary students, as well as elementary students. And it provides that opportunity for them to apply those TPSR skills, those strategies that can foster some of the important outcomes of the TPSR model. So TPSR pedagogy is really important. How to teach those particular types of values, the responsibility goals that we've talked about. So teaching, practica, secondary, elementary, and then also we have courses that are really focusing on the idea of what do we know about programs for youth and serving youth. And we kind of focus on underserved youth in a large way, but one of the courses is a programs for underserved youth, and it's a course that really kind of provides an overview of what it means to be underserved, what are some of the challenges that kids have of being underserved, but also what are ways in which the needs of underserved kids are being met, what types of programs are out there. And we talk about different types of sports programs and then zero in on the TPSR model, but giving the kids an overview, a landscape of what types of programs are operating in different types of youth agencies. And then we have a course also called mentoring, and that provides opportunities for students to work one-on-one with a student. And this course provides mentoring strategies, learning about how you connect with kids, how to communicate with kids, doing goal setting. But it's an important element of the youth development professional training program in the sense that it really allows the student to have sustained contact with an undergraduate student, sustained contact with a youngster that has different types of needs, and gaining that particular type of relationship is certainly instrumental in that type of experience, that mentoring experience. But that's a really important course, one-on-one mentoring, and so that provides another kind of fortification of their experience in working with youth. And then evaluating programs, a really important part, I think, of what we could do in terms of developing competencies and professionals that are going to work in youth serving agencies is knowing how to evaluate. What kinds of models are out there? We have some examples of evaluation that have been reported in the research here at this conference and from the people at this table. But different types of models, different ways in which we can evaluate. It's so important to show what is the impact of the types of programs that we're providing, types of leadership, how is that leadership really being translated into important outcomes for youth. And then activity classes also is another part of our repertoire of professional development. Getting kids to be knowledgeable about physical activity, because that is going to be an important element of the programs in which these prospective leaders go out in these community programs. So what about activity programs? What kind of exposure do they have? So they take a series of different types of activity programs that prepare them for that. And then we have the final thing, which is the capstone experience, which is internships. And we have a 250 to 300 hour internship, which is placing the undergraduate during their senior year into a youth serving agency. And typically those are agencies like Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Parks and Rec programs, and say some church programs that are running different special programs, some for-profit programs that are serving youth in different ways. But that internship provides a more sustained experience, and it is a guided internship so that they come out with an idea of the different nuances of the setting in which they're working with. So that's kind of the example of what we mean by these core experiences that are part of this professional track. There are challenges that go with this, and I just want to present 5 of these challenges just to kind of put things in a little perspective. But I think one of the challenges is setting a set of best practices. And what I mean by that is really coming up with a common set of what are the things that kids need to have to be successful as leaders, program leaders, as they go out in these programs. And certainly there's been some research we can draw on the principles of positive youth development from Benson, Lerner, and Helper, and all of those others that have really kind of drawn together different types of qualities of youth programs. But having a set of best practices, I think that is knowledgeable for professional development would be an important thing to be able to harness. And the other part of this is positioning within traditional teacher education program. I struggle with that. We originally, when we started with youth development programming at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, we started with teacher ed, but it was very difficult because of the context differences in terms of school program and also the boundaries that are set by the standards, state standards and national standards for teacher education. Community-based programs and community programs that are very flexible, very fluid and dynamic and have different nuances from setting to setting require some flexibility in that program. And the idea of being set with a certain type of things that have to be included in lesson planning and all of that just ran counter to the whole spirit of the youth development professional preparation program. So we kind of separated that, and it was difficult. Now, certainly, I know that Sarah and some of the others here are working within the teacher education program, but it's a big challenge. It was a challenge for us, and one that we're still struggling with. And then acquiring TPSR competency. How do we know that kids that are going out, students that are going out from this program are competent in TPSR? Well, it is a lot of clinical work that's involved with these courses. these core courses that we talked about. There's a lot of reflection, there's a lot of evaluation, a lot of guidance. We evaluate in different ways, through videotaping, through discussion, reflection, group sessions, and so on. But acquiring that TPSR competency is going to vary from student to student. But it is a challenge, and it's important that students come out using the TPSR model that is able to ensure some fidelity when they get out there in professional practice. So that is also impacted by the variability of site experiences. All sites have different types of missions, different types of goals, and so dealing with those particular types of variations from site to site is a challenge. To come out and provide a TPSR model to provide some kind of type of leadership in those particular types of programs can be a very, very big challenge for some students, and to be able to get everybody on the same footing is certainly something that becomes difficult. And also evaluating the efficacy of programs, the challenge of how good these programs are to prepare people to deliver out of these programs is always going to be a challenge. How do we know these programs are doing what they're supposed to be doing? And so those are 5 challenges that I think are really important to consider as you pursue this type of professional track. Just some final thoughts on this. One is, as we talk about TPSR, obviously we're all committed to the model, and we're committed to it. And I think that's an important thing in terms of students who come out of this program. If we're going to emphasize TPSR, to really be committed to the whole spirit of TPSR. And to be able to make sure that students really grasp the importance of that model and what it is and what it means in terms of delivery of good programs. And then the second thing is, how will the future landscape of sport-based youth development look? I think that's going to be dependent largely on the leaders that we place out in programs, and the type of preparation that they've had, and the spirit that they have, the professional skills that they've had. That is going to determine what this landscape will look like. And I'm hoping that as we think about this, is that we take some of the stuff that was given to us today by the people, Dave and Sylvie and Barry and Paul and myself, that we can have a foothold in terms of how we can develop that landscape in a positive way, so that we can produce leaders that will go out in these community programs and be able to provide those types of experiences